They didn't demote me. They didn't warn me. They just took my name off the work I built, handed it to someone I was told to train, and acted like I never belonged there to begin with. I'm Avery Quinn, 37, head of product strategy at Oryx Systems, at least on paper. For nearly a decade, I'd been the one translating chaos into clarity, stitching together fractured infrastructures into something boardrooms could sell. I didn't wear branded fleece jackets or talk in sound bites. I spoke code, regulation, architecture. I made things work when others just described how they should, quietly. That morning, I arrived at 6:42 a.m., as I always did. The building's security system still recognized my badge. The elevator chimed the same dull note. The marble floors had just been polished, and the lobby smelled like synthetic citrus. Everything was sterile and expensive, the kind of design chosen by people who valued aesthetics over function. I walked past the oversized mission statement etched in frosted glass, "Move fast, think big, build smart," and stepped into the elevator. 27th floor, the floor no one lingered on without a reason. My desk was in the far left corner, tucked against the window. 1 plant, 2 monitors, 0 personal items. I kept it that way intentionally. No family photos, no cute mugs with slogans. Just order, just focus, just mine. Then I opened the shared drive. It should have been routine. I was finalizing the rollout deck for a cross-regional product suite, months of partner calls, red lines, compliance threading, and systems logic, the kind of deck that took precision to build and blood to defend. I knew every inch of that file. I'd built it like a structure, balanced, strategic, sound, but now the document properties read along. Lena Moss, consultant, early 30s, smooth voice, sharp wardrobe. She'd been shadowing me for weeks under the guise of strategic alignment. Her background was branding, not architecture, not policy, not security protocols. But she knew how to smile at the right moment and speak just long enough to sound competent. At first, I gave her the benefit of doubt. Maybe she downloaded the file. Maybe she saved over it. Maybe, but when I opened it, the changes were deliberate. Rephrased bullets, reformatted charts. Nothing broken, just rewritten. Just enough to pass as hers. I didn't respond. Didn't escalate. I mirrored the drive. Archived the version history. Encrypted the real one and stored it offline. Then I walked to the window. From the 27th floor, the skyline looked clinical. Buildings made of light and glass. Like the company itself, transparent only from the outside. The week went on. Lena started leading meetings I used to run. She dropped my phrases like they were her own, my decisions, my frameworks, my words. I became background useful enough to mine, unnecessary enough to ignore. By Friday, the memo came, subject line, realigning strategic leadership roles. No name, no attribution, just an initiative list. Now under her, I stared at the screen. 7 seconds flat, then I closed the laptop. Not out of anger, just recognition. They weren't going to fire me. They were going to erase me, quietly, and I wasn't going to stop them. Not yet. I didn't reply to the restructure memo. I didn't forward it. I didn't even screenshot it. Instead, I reopened the offline vault. The folder was simple, no label, no branding. Just a matte black icon on a password-protected external drive, synced to nothing. Inside it lived the original rollout plan, not the sanitized version, the real one. The one I'd spent 6 months constructing contractual contingencies, jurisdiction-specific compliance layers, integration schematics. It wasn't just a presentation. It was a map of the company's spine, and I'd built it from the inside out. I tagged each file by risk exposure. Green, yellow, red. Then I built a timeline overlay. What did they know? What didn't they know? What could they fake without me? What would collapse without the internal logic I never documented? By the time I finished, the drive looked more like a puzzle board than a proposal. The pieces that worked the ones they wanted credit for were the same ones that required me to hold them together. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt clinical, like I was dissecting a body I'd once kept alive. I scrolled through old meeting logs, system audits, email threads they thought were deleted. Not because I wanted revenge, because I needed a mirror, proof that what I built was real and not just a story I told myself. Later that evening, I met Eli for coffee neutral ground, a quiet shop 2 blocks off from the Flatiron office. He'd left Oryx last year when his team got merged into global innovation. Translation, cost cutting. We never talked about it much. Now he sipped an oat latte and tilted his head. You look like someone halfway through writing a resignation letter you'll never send. I smiled. Thin, not writing anything yet. He nodded, then said nothing for a while, just sat there, watching me the way engineers watch systems tracking for failure. He didn't ask for gossip. He didn't need to. Then, if you had to rebuild it from scratch, no politics, no legacy code, what's the first thing you'd do? I didn't answer, but my hand reached into my coat pocket and tightened around the encrypted USB stick. He noticed. Of course he did, but he didn't press. Just nodded again, slow and deliberate, like someone recognizing the start of something. Back in my apartment, I opened a new folder. No name, no logo, just a single document titled Foundation. I didn't outline strategy. I didn't draw diagrams. I just listed the rules, principles I wished Oryx still followed. Integrity over spin, clarity over control, design over optics. I wasn't building a product. Not yet. I was building alignment with myself. I created a clean Git repo, private, no link to my name. Then another, a secure cloud environment with isolated dev permissions. I copied over nothing, no lines of code. No client data, no intellectual property. I wasn't stealing. I was starting, and no one knew. Not Lena, not Miles, not even Eli. Oryx still thought I was quiet because I was loyal. They didn't realize I was quiet because I was gone. The email came in at 7:03 a.m. Subject, termination of employment effective immediately. No greeting. No body text beyond the legal paragraph. Just my name. A timestamp. And a note that my access would be revoked within the hour. If I had questions, I could direct them to Oryx. No signature, no human hand behind the words. I stared at the screen without blinking. My coffee hadn't even cooled yet. Then I tried the dashboard. Access denied. Tried my Slack account. Session expired. I pulled up the internal calendar. It flickered for a moment, then went blank. I didn't panic. I didn't even breathe hard. I just closed the lid of the company-issued laptop, set it gently to the side, and reached under the desk for my personal machine, Maddie Black, offline, untouchable. 27 minutes later, I was in the lobby of Oryx HQ, same floor polish, same lemon-laced air. I scanned my badge. Red light. The security guard Daniel hesitated. Ms. Quinn, I wasn't told you were coming in. I wasn't told I wasn't. He looked down at his screen, embarrassed. They flagged the credentials this morning. I nodded. It's fine. And it was because I already knew what I'd see. Still, I took the elevator up. The 27th floor felt colder than usual. Or maybe that was just me noticing for the first time how much warmth I used to bring to a place that never returned it. No one looked up. No, hey, Avery. No, what happened? Not even eye contact. The team I'd trained. The analysts I'd coached. The project managers who used to ping me at 10 p.m. With quick clarifications, they all looked through me now, like I was already a ghost. One woman shifted uncomfortably and minimized her screen the moment she noticed me walking past. Another stood and walked to the break room without saying a word. Silence. Not confusion. Not shock. Just premeditated silence. My desk had been cleared. The plant was gone. The monitors had been swapped. Even the chair was different, brand new. The tag still hanging off the back. There was a folded paper on the surface. A printout of the weekly Leadership Digest. Moss appointed director. Strategic Product Initiatives. No mention of a transition. No acknowledgement of what came before. Just a new name, printed in bold. I didn't touch the paper. I didn't take it. I didn't need a souvenir. I walked to the window, my old window, and looked out at the skyline. It looked the same, but I wasn't the same. And neither, I suspected, was Oryx. They hadn't replaced me. They'd erased me. That was the difference. Replacement still implies value. Erasure implies threat. It was never about whether I was good enough. It was about whether I was containable. I stood there a full minute longer, let the light hit my face like I still belonged. Then I turned, walked out, and didn't look back, because I wasn't walking away from Oryx. I'd already started walking towards something else. They just didn't know it yet. I didn't start with a team. I started with silence, the kind that comes after being erased. Not fired, not debated, just removed cleanly, clinically, like white space in a slide deck. But the thing about silence is, it echoes, if you know where to listen. I opened the foundation document again now with a single new line. Find the ones who still build when no one's watching. Raquel was first. We hadn't spoken in 8 months. She used to run legal compliance for partner onboarding until her division got streamlined. What that meant was she asked too many questions, pushed too hard on international clauses, and wouldn't let the CEO's pet project get special exemptions. She once covered for me when an executive tried to bypass consent language in a client draft. She didn't ask for recognition. She just fixed it, quietly, and sent me a version that protected us both. I sent her a message. No subject, just a time and an encrypted link. She joined 3 minutes early. Her camera was off. Her voice, the same low, exacting, tired in the way only someone principled and burned can be. I've been waiting for this, she said. She didn't ask what this was. Then came Tomas. Finance strategy. He once rebuilt an entire modeling system in 72 hours when a partner flagged inaccuracies mid-due diligence. Leadership called it reactive brilliance, then let him go during the next cycle to cut costs. I remembered how he stayed after hours once, walking me through revenue structures line by line, not because I asked, but because he said, you should never be blindsided in front of the board. He didn't wait for an explanation this time either. I'll need access to a sandbox, he said, and we're not naming this thing yet. Right. No, I said. Names come after foundation. The third was Eli. Not because I called him again, but because he called me. I heard about the morning memo, he said. How? He paused. Doesn't matter. I've been sketching systems architecture models. Nothing fancy. Just pressure-tested pathways. You want them? I didn't say yes. I just shared the repository. 3 days in, I had 3 nodes. Legal, finance, engineering. No logo, no roadmap. No Slack. We didn't speak daily. We didn't plan a launch. We didn't touch any code that traced back to Oryx. But we had a rule. If it wouldn't survive a boardroom shortcut, we didn't build it. Sometimes I'd sit in my apartment and just stare at the terminal screen empty, blinking, waiting, not for code, but for conviction. And slowly, it arrived. Raquel began drafting a new compliance protocol, one that defaulted to transparency instead of plausible deniability. Tomas outlined a financial model that scaled sideways, not top-down client first instead of investor flattering. Eli, true to form, sent me a modular structure for systems logic with one note. Tested it. It doesn't break when people do. No one asked who was in charge. No one asked what we'd call it. We weren't chasing credit. We were correcting failure. This wasn't a movement. It was a rebuild, one silent line of trust at a time. We didn't start with funding or followers or branding. We started with the people who knew how it all really worked and who'd been told, again and again, that knowing wasn't enough. We didn't start loud. We started aligned. I didn't need to sabotage anything. I just needed to stop holding it up. The first pull was subtle. I removed my credentials from the shared analytics dashboard I'd built for Trident reporting, one the Oryx team was still using, without fully understanding how it compiled jurisdictional exceptions. No announcement, just a silent API key deactivation. Overnight, the dashboard started returning incomplete data. They didn't notice. Not immediately. The second thread I pulled was legal structure. Raquel rewrote the compliance flow for third-party access this time, with an audit trail that couldn't be overridden by internal edits. We published it not to the public, but to our private instance, a mirror portal accessible only through encrypted tokens, already shared with 2 partners who'd grown wary of Oryx's delays. One of them replied within 24 hours. This version makes more sense. Cleaner. Whose team is this? We didn't answer. Instead, Thomas deployed a sandbox model of our alternative billing structure modular, region-based, built to simplify quarterly reporting without compromising audit readiness. He labeled it experimental and attached no branding. We sent it to an old contact at Tolera Group with a note. A possible option if your current system isn't scaling. The reply came an hour later. Who built this? It's elegant. Still, no signatures, no names, just architecture that worked. Meanwhile, Eli seeded our core structure with a stress response failover that Venture and Oryx's spin-off client had repeatedly asked for but never received. He didn't code it into their system. He built it into ours. Then we sat back and waited. Within 10 days, Oryx's client services flagged internal inconsistencies. Slide decks weren't matching legacy data. A partner pinged for a missing clause that had been standard 6 months ago. An executive sent a Slack asking if someone had updated the doc framework Avery used to manage compliance. They were tugging at a net they no longer realized I had woven. And I wasn't done. I reached out to a procurement lead at Your Data, not as myself, but through an anonymized contact relaying technical capabilities. No promises, no proposals. Just a case study, one I wrote months earlier, but updated quietly with Raquel's new redlining structure. 3 days later, we received a request. Can you replicate this? We could, but we didn't say yes. Not yet. We had one rule. Nothing moves until Oryx notices the weight they lost. So we kept the rhythm slow, steady. Every step visible, but only if you knew where to look. Inside Oryx. Meetings got longer. Response times lagged. Lena's name showed up on client-facing portals. But the questions started piling. Why did the risk table disappear? Why did response windows stretch? Why were red lines being retracted? A week later, one client sent a follow-up. We're noticing gaps. Avery used to bridge them. Can we talk to her directly? They were told I was unavailable. And suddenly, the conversation stopped. No escalation, no complaint. Just silence. By the second week, internal tension spilled into leadership threads. Someone blamed ops. Ops blamed legal. Legal asked if Thomas had left documentation. No one mentioned my name. Not out of protection. Out of pretense. None of it pointed at me. That was the point. They thought I was gone. They hadn't realized I'd taken my architecture with me. Oryx thought the system was holding. They hadn't noticed the scaffolding was mine. It started with delays. Minor at first follow-up emails sent a day late. Revised documents taking longer to circulate. Response windows quietly doubling. No one screamed. No one questioned. But inside Oryx, the silence wasn't calm. It was compression. From the outside, the company still looked polished. Press releases, client spotlights, Lena's LinkedIn posts framed in confident tones and filtered light. Driving cross-functional momentum, scaling strategic integration. Inside, they were drowning. I didn't have access to their systems anymore. But I didn't need to. A project manager I used to mentor forwarded me a calendar screenshot. 8 meetings stacked in a single afternoon block. Emergency alignment, partner risk review, contract reassessment, urgent. Another message came in from a friend on the tech ops team. Is it just me, or are we rewriting decks that were done months ago? I didn't reply. Across departments, requests that used to be simple began looping. Legal asked finance to clarify language that used to be locked. Finance asked ops why delivery dates were shifting. Ops asked who was even owning the timeline now. No one answered. Miles, the CEO, scheduled an all-hands. I wasn't there. But I heard about it 2 hours later. He spoke in circles. According to 3 people, we're in a transitionary moment, he said. Realignment is natural in growth. Speed sometimes causes recalibration. One person asked, what changed? He didn't answer. Meanwhile, Lena started appearing on every email thread. Not contributing, just watching, trying to triangulate the cracks without knowing where the foundations had been poured. One senior associate on her team tried to replicate my framework for multi-region compliance audits. I saw the version when a partner accidentally forwarded it to a legacy Oryx inbox I still monitored. The template looked familiar. The logic did not. I deleted the email. Elsewhere, things got stranger. Oryx missed a deadline for a pilot with Rendeck Corp small, but high visibility. They blamed it on resource reallocation. Internally, the excuse was that documentation had stalled. Then Eurospec canceled a Q3 roadmap review without rescheduling. That one was different. That one came with no message at all, just a calendar decline. Tomas saw it first. He shared the client note in our internal vault. We're taking a pause to reevaluate strategic alignment with current vendors. Vendors, plural, but I knew what they meant. They weren't waiting for Orynyx to recover. They were already leaving. Raquel paused after reading it. Do we nudge? No, I said. Not yet. The longer we waited, the clearer the choice would be. Because while Orynyx was issuing new roles and reshuffling ownership charts, we were refining. Quietly, deliberately. They added noise. We added clarity. Inside the company, department leads began blaming one another. Ops flagged legal. Legal escalated to strategy. Strategy defaulted to Lena. And Lena, she blamed the system. But the system had been mine. What remained was a hollow replica assembled fast, renamed, reassigned, but unsupported. Some employees began walking out of meetings early, not in protest, in resignation, like watching a machine keep spinning long after its source had been unplugged. By the end of week 3, a second client asked about continuity, not in those words. They asked, "Is your strategic architecture team still active?" Orynyx replied with a standard message about integration pivots. The client didn't respond. They just went quiet. No reply. No escalation. No hand raised. Like watching lights flicker in a hallway no one is walking through anymore. It wasn't breaking from pressure. It was breaking from absence. The email wasn't from a C-level executive. It came from a junior procurement analyst at Talera Group. Name I didn't recognize. Signature block stripped to initials. No subject line. Just a message that read, "We're reviewing vendor continuity for Q4. If an alternate technical model existed lighter, modular, human forward, would it be viable for transition under shared legal alignment?" No attachment. No logo. No bolded terms. Just careful phrasing, like a wire walked in dress shoes. I read it twice. Then I read it again. Then I closed the laptop. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent it to Raquel. She answered in less than 5 minutes. They're not asking. They're inviting. Tomas saw it next. They're rerouting authority without saying it out loud. Eli didn't reply in words. He just updated the internal tracker. Client 01, soft signal received. Readiness, 72%. No one said let's go. We didn't high-five. We didn't strategize. We just knew. Because it was never about a pitch deck. It was about friction. And they'd had enough of it. Talera had been one of the first clients to pilot the Orynyx Trident integration. I remembered sitting across from their legal team in Frankfurt. 3 days into a jet lag I'd buried under espresso and repetition. I'd rewritten their compliance interface by hand when the Orynyx spec proved incompatible with EU digital norms. They remembered that too. I remembered their lead counsel pulling me aside after the final call. You don't just negotiate. You translate chaos into clarity. That doesn't show up in a resume. She shook my hand like she meant it, not like protocol, like gratitude. Now, with Lena at the helm, the system they were handed looked sleek but slid on corners. The terms didn't match. The logic flow broke. The templates were empty where legal certainty should have been embedded, and I wasn't there to patch it. They'd noticed. Raquel pulled up a mirror version of the legacy Orynyx to Talera schema, the one I built but never formally deployed. She added a note. This is what they expect to see, and what they're not seeing now. Thomas mapped the transition triggers, internal checkpoints, third-party audit touchpoints, phase shift compatibility. He didn't use Orynyx language. He just labeled it modular phase readiness neutral anchor. Eli recompiled the infrastructure for Talera as a parallel draft. No branding, just stability. We didn't send anything back. Not yet. Instead, we watched Orynyx partner Portal. Lena had posted a vague update that morning, realigning multi-partner operations with streamlined delivery objectives. Talera didn't repost it. They didn't like it. They didn't share it. They just went quiet. Silence, at that level, is louder than statements. By evening, the original procurement analyst followed up with a second message. Do you anticipate limited bandwidth for post-Q4 onboarding? Still no signature. Still no formal ask. But everything underneath said, we're done waiting for your company. We're starting to follow your person. It wasn't unexpected, but it still landed like a weight. Not because I needed their attention, but because it confirmed the truth I'd built for months. That loyalty wasn't just about contracts. It was about who showed up when the system cracked. I forwarded the thread to the vault. Raquel tagged it. High certainty signal. Tomas flagged risk-adjusted capacity. Eli added, network impact potential. Cascading. We didn't discuss whether to say yes. We just checked our systems for readiness. Aurenix hadn't lost the account. Not officially. But they weren't being asked questions anymore. We were. They hadn't called it a switch, but they'd already stopped asking Aurenix for answers. The vault dashboard lit up with 3 tags in red. Client 01. Soft confirmed. Client 02. Quiet withdrawal. Client 03. Transition interest flagged. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I typed one line. Time to operationalize. No ceremony, no emails, no mission statement. Just execution. Raquel went first. She uploaded a draft framework titled Continuity Clause Vendor Neutral Bridge. It was lean, precise, designed to grant clients a graceful exit from Aurenix systems without naming them. Or us. No branding. No legal trail. Just clarity cloaked in neutrality. She wrote me. This language gives them the freedom to move and deniability if asked why. Her draft had been prepared for weeks. She'd just been waiting for the right signal. Thomas followed. He pushed a mirrored payments schema into a secure test environment. The routing structure used third-party aggregators, avoiding any identifiable overlap with Aurenix's ledgers. He created dummy accounts for load tests, ran simulations, mapped fallback nodes. He added a note. If someone audits this, it'll read like a side project from a clean vendor. And technically, it is. His tone was calm. But I knew how long he'd been designing this to avoid the term migration. Then came Eli. He finalized the modular infrastructure stack. Clean. Cloud native. With fallback integrations and redacted APIs. It didn't look like the Aurenix system. It looked like what Aurenix had always promised, but never delivered. Beta access was granted to 2 aliases. We didn't tell them how to use it. They just logged in. Within 24 hours, one uploaded live data. Just 3 rows, but they were real. Raquel paused when she saw it. That's not a test. No, I said. It's trust. She ran a legal sweep. Nothing traceable. No leaks. No fingerprints. This could stand in court, she said, and still disappear in plain sight. Tomas marked the ledger. First inbound record masked. Timestamp secured. We didn't respond. We adjusted load capacity. A day later, Client 03 sent a file request through the mirror portal. No words. No banner. Just a query ping for structure bundle V2, conflict resilient. Eli pulled up the archive. They're replicating what we showed them 3 months ago. Quietly, I said. They're preparing to shift. We didn't prompt. We didn't push. They just moved. The framework wasn't public. No press release. No change of logos. The contracts were unsigned. The records encrypted. But functionally, it had already begun. One system shrank. The other activated, and no one announced the transfer. That was the point. Every click they made, every line they revised was a vote, not against Aurenix, but toward us. Raquel began preparing a document for internal use only, onboarding signals. Adaptive clause matching, low-profile indemnification. Tomas linked it to a live billing tracker under rotating IP masks. Eli rerouted uptime alerts to burn-on-read accounts. Everything invisible. Everything intact. I stared at the dashboard again. The numbers moved. No ads. No announcements. No outreach. Just gravity. We weren't pulling them in. They were letting go of the old structure and drifting toward the one still standing. We didn't say welcome. We didn't call it migration. We called it what it was. Continuity, claimed by competence. No flags. No noise. No trail. I opened the vault, typed one line. Conversion initiated. Visibility. 0%. Control. 100%. It started with a Slack message, then 2, then 10. Screenshots from a client portal. Mismatched tables. Disconnected clauses. Files that opened but displayed blanks. At 8:42 a.m. GCE, Aurenix sent a bulk request to 3 major partners asking for clarification on document integration. At 9:03, one replied, "We've updated to the structure outlined in the new framework. No name, no signature, just a sentence." By 9:30, Miles had scheduled a level 0 response meeting. 14 people joined. No one spoke first. Then Lena shared a deck. Emergency transition mapping, hypothetical protocol realignments. Tomas and I saw it simultaneously. He whispered through the vault. They're trying to reverse engineer what's already live. She listed systems affected, compliance sync, document formatting, audit logging, third-party handoffs. Each item ours. But they couldn't see that because they weren't looking for us. They were trying to fix a machine without realizing the engine was never theirs. In the meeting, someone asked, "Why didn't we detect this earlier?" Silence. Then a reply. "We thought it was just turbulence." Turbulence. That was the word they chose. Like this was weather. Like it would pass. By 10, 12, a new alert popped up in their internal incident queue. Client 03 had submitted a new schema compatibility request, but not to Orinix, to our mirror. Raquel confirmed it. Live submission, non-Orinix tags. Protocol matches our V2 structure. I stared at the timestamp. There was no need to do anything. No escalation, no outreach, no war room. The switch had happened, without a single switch flipped. That afternoon, Miles issued a company-wide message. We are engaging in strategic decoupling of legacy integrations while maintaining our vision for vertical coherence. It meant nothing. It was noise. Inside the vault, Eli posted a silent screenshot. A legacy Orinix report sent by Lena had been returned rejected. Unsupported file type. Format not recognized. It wasn't the content. It was the container. They'd sent a file to a system that no longer spoke their language, and the system had answered truthfully. At 4:47 p.m., Client 01 issued a formal notice to Orinix. Please disable administrative access to Data Environment X. A new compliance partner is now managing the stack. No sign-off. No explanation, just closure. Tomas flagged it in red. Raquel added the legal annotation, termination by functional obsolescence. Eli archived the last crossover record. I added one line to the vault log. Transition irreversibility confirmed. Then I looked at the map. The real one. Not a spreadsheet. A wall of nodes. Clients. Infrastructure pings half of it still gray, half of it glowing. Not one server went dark. Not one alert blared. But the shift was seismic. The center had moved, and no one inside Orinix even knew which way they were facing. We didn't celebrate. We just made the shift permanent. Back at Orinix, another meeting began. Another deck shared. Another round of internal blame. They were still looking for the missing part. Still trying to retrieve the thing they'd thrown away. But the map wasn't lost. It had walked out the door the moment they erased my name. I didn't crash their system. I just stopped holding it up. They didn't lose to me. They lost the moment they erased the only map they ever had. I didn't plan to appear. That was never the point. The architecture didn't need my name. The system wasn't built on visibility. It was built on function. But then, Telera published their quarterly statement. Buried deep page 17. Bottom section was a short line. Platform stabilization attributed to external modular integration led by third-party strategy architect A. And confidential. No press release. No photos. No name in bold. But the initials were mine. 2 days later, a niche trade blog picked it up. They speculated. Could this be the same Avery Nye who built Orinix's compliance lattice 3 years ago? The post had no traction at first. Then someone linked it on an industry Slack. Then a LinkedIn whisper thread. Then a forwarded deck from Randex showed a systems diagram too elegant, too familiar. Someone wrote, "This wasn't built by a ghost." That was when I got the first email. Not from a partner. From a junior systems engineer at a company I'd never worked with. "Are you the one behind the vault stack?" I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the vault interface, added one feature, public API key for architecture lookup. Read only. No user data, just structure. By morning, 5 new inquiries landed. Quiet, private, pointed. They didn't want brand stories. They wanted frameworks. And frameworks. One of them wrote, "Not asking for an overhaul, just tired of pretending the old structure still works." I forwarded it to Raquel, Tomas, and Eli. No message, just the quote. They understood. A week later, a podcast episode titled "The Ghost Architect" was released by a respected engineering roundtable. 3 compliance officers, 2 systems designers, and a former CTO walked through a set of patterns. No one said my name, but every word traced a silhouette. There's precision here. You don't guess your way into this kind of inner lock. Whoever's behind it, they're not trying to sell. They're trying to fix. And then, quiet. No sponsorships. No follow-ups. Just reverence. By the time the next quarter rolled around, 3 more clients had adjusted their compliance charts. None used my name, but every system bore the trace of a hand that had never stopped building. One night, I sat alone in front of the vault interface. No alerts, no flags, just a constellation of connected nodes lines I hadn't drawn, but still aligned with every principle I ever coded. It didn't feel like being seen. It felt like being understood. So I didn't walk on stage, didn't give interviews, didn't publish manifestos. I just left one thing, a public note on the vault, labeled Continuity, Open Source, and beneath it, a single line of code. You don't need visibility to have vision. That was my appearance. That was enough. The email came with a subject line that read, Exploratory Interest, Confidential. It wasn't from a startup. It was from a firm I'd known by reputation, only one of the 5 that had tried to acquire Orynyx 2 years ago before walking away mid-negotiation. Their logo was quiet. Their reach was not. I opened it. The body was short. We've observed structural convergence patterns matching a system architecture attributed, informally, to your team. We'd like to discuss potential alignment technology first. Optional integration. Full IP respect, no brand changes, no public announcement. Would you be open to a conversation? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reread the line. Full IP respect. That wasn't normal. Most acquisition feelers came wrapped in ownership language folding, absorbing, rebranding. This one came with boundaries and precision. I forwarded it to Raquel, Tomas, and Eli. Raquel responded first. Legal phrasing's clean. They're offering safe harbor. Thomas wrote next. They're not asking for code. They're asking for direction. Eli just added, feels like an upgrade, not a takeover. We didn't say yes. We didn't say no. We just paused the auto-expansion queue. That night, we met for the first call in weeks that didn't involve clients or systems. Just the 4 of us. No slides. Raquel asked the only real question. Would it still be ours? I said, if they're listening, not replacing, then maybe it never stops being ours. It was quiet after that, but the kind of quiet where ideas get space to breathe. We'd been building in a straight line for months, expanding node by node, client by client, no noise, no funding, no overhead. But now, someone wanted in without changing the shape of what already worked. And that mattered, because power that preserves shape is rarer than power that overwrites. 3 days passed, then another message. Same sender. We're not trying to lead. We're trying to learn. It landed differently, not because it praised, but because it understood. I stared at the screen, then typed one line. Send your architects. That was it. No pitch, no call, just permission. What came next wasn't a deal. It was a conversation, and that was more than enough. They arrived 4 days later, not with contracts, with notebooks, not with opinions, with diagrams. They didn't ask to own it. They asked how to protect it. I didn't give them a playbook. I gave them the vault. They didn't need permission to build, just a clear enough vision to know where not to break. They didn't ask for an answer, but I owed one to myself. If no one else. For months, we'd built without permission, without oversight, without promises. Now, for the first time, there was a path forward with structure, but it came with a choice. The offer on the table was clean. Keep control. Expand safely. Guide others. Or stay silent. Let the system scale on trust alone. One was scaffolding. The other, flight. Both had gravity. I walked the edges of that choice in my head for days. What mattered more, being the architect of something preserved, or the ghost behind something multiplying. I remembered the first night after Orynyx. An empty apartment. A whiteboard with no logos. The freedom was real, but so was the isolation. Since then, we'd found rhythm. Raquel with her clauses, Thomas with his ledgers, Eli with his invisible walls. Each of us had built something we didn't want to lose, but building alone wasn't the goal. Building something that could stand without us was. The team didn't push. They just waited. Until one morning, Eli sent a single message. They asked for architects, but they need custodians. It stayed with me, not because it changed my mind, but because it named what I hadn't been ready to admit. Legacy isn't architecture. It's maintenance. It's saying yes not because you want more, but because you're willing to keep what already works from breaking. Raquel sent me a clause draft unsigned, unmarked, just titled if chosen to stay. Thomas added a new ledger column labeled Custodial Flow Nonprofit Mirrors. Eli moved 3 test servers into what he called Neutral Zone Alpha. None of them asked what I'd decide, but each one made space for it. And suddenly, it wasn't a question of choosing sides. It was a question of choosing continuity. So I opened the vault, not to rewrite, not to lock down, but to publish one more node, Transition Approved Conditional Stewardship. Below it, a note. You don't need to lead it. You just need to keep it from being dismantled. That was my answer. Not a contract, not a speech, just continuity again by choice, by trust, and by those willing to hold the line. That evening, I stepped outside for the first time in days. No alarms, no meetings, just a quiet wind, systems humming in the background. Not because I was watching them, but because someone else was, and that was enough. There was no announcement, no final call, no handoff meeting. The system didn't need a send-off. It just kept going. Clients came in, not because they were recruited, but because they heard it worked. Engineers submitted pull requests, not for credit, but because the logic was clean. Raquel drafted fewer clauses. Thomas audited fewer ledgers. Eli monitored less traffic, because less was breaking. That was the win. No viral growth, no unicorn headlines, just a steady pulse. Sustainable, quiet, alive. I began to log in less often. At first, every morning. Then every few days. Then only when something flickered. And even then, someone else usually saw it first. A message from a junior analyst in Singapore. Node 44's caching is off spec. I've patched and backtested. Flag cleared. From a systems lead in Brazil. Mirror 9 holding at 99. 98%. No escalation needed. From someone I didn't know in Denmark. This framework taught me how to build without fear. I never replied. Didn't need to. The system had become what it was meant to be. Self-correcting. Self-scaling. Selfless. There was no center anymore. Just momentum. One afternoon, I saw a systems architecture conference stream online. A small panel was discussing vault-informed resilience layers. They didn't mention me. Didn't mention anyone I knew. Just diagrams, protocols, and a shared language we never taught, just released. I watched 5 minutes, then closed the tab. Eventually, I moved the Vault interface off my home screen, not out of disinterest, but because it no longer needed to be watched, and neither did I. We'd built something durable enough to survive us. That had always been the goal. Not applause, not recognition, just a system that outlives its architects. The kind that doesn't collapse when the builder steps away. So one morning, I did. No speech, no log note. Just a final ping to Raquel, Tomas, and Eli. Vault is yours now. Raquel replied with a heart. Thomas sent a handshake emoji. Eli just wrote, it always was. Then I closed the tab, stood up, walked outside. The city moved around me. No one knew who I was, and that felt right. There was no silence. There was hum, not from machines, from something we'd left behind. Still moving, still trusted, still ours, even as it no longer needed us.